Hello, folks. This is R. Payne here. Marriage, politics, and sports. Listen, I just caught on to this press conference that J.D. Vance had at the border from the 5th of March. I didn't see this, so I just thought it was pretty good to talk about what they did at the border and the fact that, you know, hopefully you heard that because my thing was off. But anyway, I was just hoping that we could see if we could pull some nuggets out on how they did this thing with just sheer determination. No new laws, no new nothing, right? And all of a sudden, we got closed borders just about. Now, to get into some other things like the drug cartels and stuff like that, there's some questions and answers. The other thing that I thought that I want to let you guys know is that tonight I'll be on Black Man Unfiltered Network, and I have another conversation about the black community and where we go in the future in terms of our politics, getting off the plantation. So I have a whole bunch of stuff there. It'll be good for you guys to come over there and listen to me there. There's going to be a lot of discussion about how we're being used by the puppet masters to keep black people on a plantation. And so we need to get off of that. So we need to put some things together and talk about that because it's definitely some kind of psychosis that makes most of us vote for one party and our lives really haven't changed at the grassroots level for almost 70 years. Anyway, so, and of course, just welcome to this channel. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Share this stuff and let them know that there's at least another black guy out there talking from a conservative perspective. And, I used to, like I said, I voted for Hillary Clinton. And that during that first Trump administration, I started to realize that our lives are not in danger because a guy like Trump is in the office. Matter of fact, my stock portfolio went off the hook, and the stock market was up 75% from 16 to 20, 2016 to 2020 until the pandemic. Other than that, the perturbation in the market today, it happens. We would do for a correction, and we're getting one. So have your dry powder ready so you could reinvest when the market levels off. Hey, what's going on, Curtis? What's going on, Catelia? Anyway, so let me get started with this thing because I got to get ready for the show tonight. Anyway.
And I appreciate you being here. It's great to be here. It's great to talk to some of the incredible people that we have, both at the local level, the Texas state level, and also, of course, our federal border patrol, who are doing so many good things to keep us safe. And I have some bad news and some good news. And the bad news is that because of what Joe Biden did at the southern border for 4 years, we had record increases in migrant crime, in fentanyl deaths, and in just floods and floods of people who shouldn't be in our country who came into the United States of America. We also have a number of ways in which the cartels became more advanced, better war fighters, because Joe Biden opened up the American southern border and allowed the cartels to turn it into their playground. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is, as President Trump said last night at the State of the Union, it turns out we didn't need new laws. We didn't need fancy legislation. We just needed a new president of the United States. And thank God that's exactly what we have.
All right, let's just stop it there. Again, this shows you that when there's a will, there's a way. When there's determination to get something done, it really doesn't take rocket science. You just need to do it. Even that funky my man Gavin Newsom, when it had some Asian or Japanese or Chinese people coming to California, and they had to clean up Skid Row, in that just like 3 weeks, they cleaned everything up. They put the money there to clean everything up, and then after it went away, the shit would turn right back to shit. Right. So so they can do the things they want to do. And so the communities are all messed up because the people who are in leadership are full of shit and they put their money elsewhere as opposed to where the people need it to be because they don't give a shit about the people. So this is the first regime that I've seen in a long time saying, listen, we have an American people, maybe not, every ethnic group and all that other kind of stuff. But as far as American, we've been getting short shifted by the government for a very long time. And some of that has to do with the Republicans as well. They have their little pet projects. But this time, it's America first. And it's evident in everything these guys are doing.
And I will say that the most heartening message that I take away from my visit here at the Texas border is the number of Border Patrol agents who have come up to me and said, thank you, or said, because of this, we've cut the number of border crossings from 1,500 a day to 30 a day. Or the people who have come up and said, we've seen a reduction in 85% of the number of people who are dying at the American southern border. And every single day that we continue to keep this border safe, that means less migrant crime, that means less fentanyl coming into our communities, that means more safety and security for the people of the United States of America. And of course, we know the border problem, the border crisis under Biden's administration was a national crisis, but it acutely affected the communities right here. And I've already heard heartbreaking stories of people who are still picking up the pieces, local mayors who are still dealing with the budgetary consequences of what the Joe Biden administration allowed to happen at the American southern border. And that, too, is something that President Trump is going to help address, help fix, and help solve. Now, I wanted to bring Secretary Hegseth and Director Gabbard at DNI down here because, one, I obviously enjoy their company, and it's good to have them down here with me looking around today. But unfortunately, we know that because of what's happened, the border crisis has become a matter of national intelligence, and it's also become something that requires the Department of Defense to engage with. I was talking with Paul Perez earlier. The drone technology that the cartels are using requires, unfortunately, a military response and military support. So it was important for Secretary Hegseth to see what's going on, because we know that the millions and millions of people who were let in over the last 4 years, many of them are connected to foreign terrorists. It's important for our leader of national intelligence to get a sense of what's here on the ground. So before we take questions from the press, and all of us are willing to take questions, I want to give Secretary Hegseth and then Director Gabbard an opportunity to say a few words themselves. Mr. Secretary.
All right, so listen, it's going to be very hard for the Democrats to find somebody who could beat J.D. Vance in 2028. It's going to be really, really difficult, especially since they haven't shown any leadership up until this point. Right now, they're thinking that Stephen A. Smith is their best choice, not any other, Democrat who's a governor or anything like that. There's no way Whitmer or maybe even the guy Shapiro or anybody else is going to beat this guy. J.D. Vance is really, really good on his feet. And let me tell you, if he has Tulsi Gabbard as his running mate, they're going to be a very tough combination to beat.
Well, Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for inviting us. It's great to be here with you, with the director, with our fellow friends in civilian clothes and in other shades of green. This is a demonstration of a true partnership on the southern border. As President Trump has made clear on the campaign trail and from day one and last night, border security is national security. And from the Defense Department, we've watched for a couple of decades other people's borders being secured while ours was open for an invasion of drugs and of violence and of chaos for American communities. That stops under President Trump. And the Defense Department has assets that we can bring to bear, not just troops, not just surveillance, not just equipment, but actual planning and capabilities that enhance what Border Patrol is already doing, which is why it's been incredible to hear from our partners about what we've been able to allow them to do, facilitate them, and we've seen it in the numbers. 98% drop in crossings on the southern border. We're not yet at 100% operational control, but we are on our way because that is the mandate that the president has given us. So more resources are coming to this border. We are dedicated to securing it. That's the reason for our trip and our partnership. And I want to thank all the men and women who've been doing it recently in uniform, who have been doing it a long time right here, have dedicated their lives to securing the American people. And at the Defense Department, we are committed to continuing to being a big part of it. So, Mr. Vice President, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Great. Now, Director of National Intelligence.
Before she goes, I want to say this. One of the things I'm going to talk about tonight on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, start at 7 o'clock, is one of the aspects of what the Democrats are doing with their purposely helping illegal immigrants evade ICE and other law enforcement agencies, some of that is actually criminal. They're not following federal law. And I think one of the reasons why we haven't seen anybody indicted yet is because it's a thin line for the Republicans to say they're not going to use quote unquote lawfare against their enemies, even if their enemies are guilty or need to be judged by the law enforcement. Only because we saw 4 years of it erroneously being used against Trump in a lot of areas and all of his allies. So it's going to be a hard parse, especially when 80% of the media are going to say, "Oh, you guys are retaliating." But AOC and the mayors of the sanctuary cities, and of course the governors of the sanctuary states, if you really look closely, they're right on the edge, the hairy edge of breaking the federal law. Matter of fact, they're probably AOC's conference to show people how to evade ICE probably overstepped the line. And she had to like, wait a minute, maybe I did cross the line in some places, because telling criminals how they could resist law enforcement right then and there is an issue. And for the governors and the mayors, letting the illegals take up resident when you know they committed a criminal act or illegal act is aiding and abetting, right? I mean, that's what they call aiding and abetting criminals. And paying taxpayers' money to do it too. I mean, there's got to be some charges against some of these people. I mean, I don't see how it can't be indicted. So this the other side. So we'll find a way to secure the border, and now we need to find a way to actually eradicate the people who have eradicate, meaning deport and arrest the people who actually slip through the cracks, and hold those people accountable who let that happen. And unfortunately, a lot of businessmen who illegally gave work, has some of these people working for them, some of them should go down too. So you can't just pick and choose, right? So, so we gotta, I think it's harder, it's gonna be a fine line to kind of erase the dirt that has been swept over the country. And really, to tell you the truth, not only by the Democrats, mostly them, but some of the Republicans are not, all of their hands aren't clean either. But even so, there's a rumor that AOC had an illegal person as one of her aides. So anyway, it's just getting thicker. And we just only went, 50 days in? Anyway, let's go.
Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for your leadership and bringing the country's attention to what has been happening here at the border and the significant change that has already occurred under the short time that President Trump has been in office. Really, what you're seeing here today and what you'll continue to see is a unified effort across President Trump's national security team, the Department of Homeland Security, towards our mission, which is to ensure a safe, free, and prosperous society for Americans. As Director of National Intelligence, there are a number of areas where we are focused. The president talked about in his speech, over 21 million people have come across our borders illegally under Joe Biden's administration. There are many of them that we don't know who they are. They have not been vetted. We don't know where they are. I'll give you one quick example of one of the problems that we are getting after. From Central Asia, there were over 4,000 people who came across our borders using an ISIS-affiliated network. Our National Counterterrorism Center went through and identified those individuals. There were hundreds of them who were either known terrorists or associated with known terrorists. That information was provided to the Biden administration. You may remember in some of the news, a little over 100 of those people were arrested in 2024. Of those who were arrested, only 8 were either deported or remained in custody. Only 8. The rest of them were released back into our country. Where are they? What are they doing? What may they be plotting? This is just the beginning. There are many, many areas that we need to stay very focused on, working with Department of Homeland Security, working with the FBI to ensure that we're keeping the American people safe. Our Counterterrorism Center is working on making sure that we have that single source for vetting so that we can figure out who is actually in our country and identify those who pose a threat and get them removed. The president's designation of the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations falls directly into this, especially as we're seeing some of the tactics that these cartels are using reflect some of the tactics that we've seen used by Islamist terrorists in countries that many of us have served in overseas. Our mission is very clear. Our objective is to keep the American people safe. I'm grateful to be a part of this team that President Trump has assembled to accomplish that mission. Thank you.
Great.
I tell you, man, Tulsi Gabbard is, if you contrast her with a person like Jasmine Crockett or AOC, it's just night and day, right? She's a veteran. She's stoic, and she, this is no slight, and I think this is a plus. She oozes femininity as a woman. I mean, she doesn't have to come off like some masculine man to show power in the words that she says. You know what I'm saying? You could just tell. She's very stoic. Whatever emotions she has them under control. And her voice doesn't sound like nails across the goddamn chalkboard, like some of these other ladies who want to be leaders. And I don't know. It's just something special about this woman. And that's why the Democrats, were mad at her when she said, listen, I'm my own person. And then she went over to the Republican side. It took her years to make that decision, by the way. She didn't do that shit overnight. Anyway, let's go.
So before I take questions, let me just say two final things. First of all, the reason why we've seen, as Pete said, a 98% reduction of border crossings, the reason why this particular site has gone from over 1,500 crossings per day to 30 crossings per day is because President Trump has empowered and, in fact, demanded that his whole government take the task of border control seriously. And that's exactly what we're doing. And of course, and this leads to my final point before we take questions, it is impossible to do without the men and women on the ground who are actually doing the hard work. They just want to be empowered to do their jobs. President Trump has made that possible. So from the bottom of my heart and for a grateful nation, to every person I've met here today, thank you for working hard on the American people's business. It's been an honor to be with you. It's been an honor to see what you do, and we're going to keep on supporting you over the next 4 years. Congressman Gonzalez, thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership. And now we'll take some questions from reporters. Sir.
So, as you guys have been exemplifying for today, that border crossings are down. A lot of attention has been turned to the interior, since obviously there's been a lot of illegal immigrants. What is, in your opinion, the biggest obstacle to actually carrying out President Trump's mass deportations? Even though, yes, like apprehensions and arrests and deportations have gone up in his first month, but a lot of people are expecting a bigger capacity for deportation. So what's
So let me say a few things about that. So first of all, Rome wasn't built in a day. And we have seen pretty significant increases in deportations and apprehensions and arrests. But we have to remember that President Biden gutted the entire immigration enforcement regime of this country. We are trying to rebuild so that we actually empower people to enforce the immigration laws of the American people. It is common sense. It's what the American people want us to do. There are a couple of other things that we're working on. And I don't want to get ahead of any public announcements, but one of the ways that we want to make sure that we're enforcing our border is that we make it easier for people who are here illegally to go back home of their own accord. We don't want to have to go around and arrest every person, but we will enforce the American people's immigration laws. If you're here illegally, the message from our administration is you should go back home. And if you want to come to the United States, apply through the proper channels. That's an important thing that we're doing. And the final thing is this costs money. One of the most important parts of the president's reconciliation priorities is, of course, tax reform on the one hand, and on the other hand, making sure that we get proper resources so that we can pay for the flights and we can pay for the detention centers and we can pay for all the components necessary to ensure that we're re-migrating illegal immigrants back to their country of origin. I guarantee it is a part of the president's priorities. We'll keep on working on it. We've made a lot of progress, but we're going to keep on working on it over the remainder of the president's term. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, I want to ask you about border wall and tariffs. But first on the border wall, how do you and the president...
Could you say your outlet, by the way, when you guys ask questions?
Yeah, Reagan Reese, Daily Caller.
Thank you.
How do you and the president define success this term with the border wall, and how much of the southern border wall needs to be walled off before Trump leaves office?
Well, look, I think the president's hope is that by the end of the term, we build the entire border wall. And of course, that's the physical structure of the border wall itself. But we even heard today, there are so many good technological tools, so many great artificial intelligence enabled technologies that allow us, for example, a camera, not a person, but a camera picks up somebody 2 miles away who's about to come across the southern border. Maybe it's livestock, right? Maybe it's a critter in the desert. Maybe it's a human being with a weapon on their back. We're using artificial intelligence to make us better at the job of border enforcement, but we've got to make sure that technology is deployed across the entire American southern border. We're going to do it as much as we can, as broadly as we can, because that's how we're going to protect the American people's security. Yeah, go ahead.
Last time they were paused because they deployed 10,000 troops to the border. What can they do this time to make the tariffs go away?
Well, what the president has said is we need a sustained commitment from the government of Mexico to take the job of border security seriously. Fentanyl is the single largest cause of death among young Americans, and we know that a substantial portion of it is, the precursors are made in China. They come to Mexico, they're manufactured in Mexico and brought across the border by the Mexican drug cartels. We want to see fewer Americans dying of these terrible fentanyl overdoses.
Well, I don't know why Vance and everybody don't come out and say, we want to see Mexico bring down some of these cartels. That's what we want to see, right? That's the key. They want to see, hold on for a second. They want to see some of these cartels taken down by the Mexicans, right? They want to see a seizure of tons of goddamn fentanyl before it gets into the country, right? So just putting 10,000 troops out there, and, I don't know if they're twiddling their thumbs, they're stopping. We want to see, President Trump, J.D. Vance wants to see some real seizure. The same thing in Canada. If you know where some of these dealings are, some of these drug dealings are, and you're not doing everything you can to shut them down with some big raids and shit like that, then you're not doing all you can. I think it's as simple as that, So we want to see some progress within the country. You know where all the criminals are. That's the thing about even law enforcement in the United States. You know where all the criminals are. You know exactly where everybody is. It's a lie to say you don't. And the fact that you don't really go after the people you need to go after, you're just full of shit. Somebody's getting paid. Somebody doesn't want to smoke. And, it doesn't get better unless you really take some of these guys down. That goes for all of us.
Is when we're going to apply as much leverage as possible to the Mexican government as possible. In some ways, look, the president obviously cares deeply about the American people. He serves the American people first. I actually think he's doing a huge favor to the people of Mexico, because if they don't get control of these cartels, the people of Mexico are going to wake up in a narco state where the cartels have more power than their own government. President Trump is trying to help. The Mexican government needs to take this issue of immigration enforcement seriously. In the back, yeah.
Mr. Vice President, Ali Bradley, News Nation. So since the designation of the cartels as terrorists, does that give the United States the green light to go into Mexico and to strike them there? I mean, right now, obviously, they've struck in the Houthis in Yemen. So why not, when we've seen cross-border violence, go after them in Mexico? And then my second question is about a designation. I'll follow up on these.
Go ahead and ask the second question.
Why isn't the war...
Before she asks the second question, that first question is a very, very good question. It's a very good question. I'm not so sure I like Vance's answer on that, but we'll get to it.
/La Linea cartel designated when it's in one of the most deadliest places on the planet. Juarez has been designated as one of the deadliest cities. It's right across from El Paso. We've talked to community leaders. They say, we know Juarez cartel's operating in the U.S. and so are their affiliates. We don't even want to talk about it out loud, though, because then we'll put a target on our back. They're scared. Border Patrol even thought they were designated, but they're not. The State Department didn't tell me why.
So on that, we're looking at additional organizations. Obviously, this is the determination of whether to determine a particular organization, a terrorist organization, is something that we consult with our leaders of the Department of Defense. We also consult with our friends in other governments. we maintain the optionality to designate further organizations, terrorist organizations, if we feel that we need to in order to protect the American people. And I think President Trump has made it very clear he's not going to be shy about designating some of these cartel organizations as terrorists if he thinks he has to protect the American people. Your first
Well, so okay.
first question was about.
American forces to strike.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So look, I'm not going to make any announcements about any invasions of Mexico here today. The president has a megaphone, and of course, he'll speak to these issues as he feels necessary. But what designating cartel organizations allows us to do is deploy the full resources of the United States military to engage in serious border enforcement. Of course, the president is going to make the determination about how we deploy those forces. But our hope is that Mexico takes this job seriously. We don't want to have negative relationships with the Mexican government. We want the Mexican government to help itself, but also in the process to help the American people by taking these organizations seriously. It's going to destabilize the entire country of Mexico, the entire government, if they don't take it more seriously. We're hopeful that they will. And if they don't, then of course, we'll figure out what to do from there.
See again, now maybe I watch too much shows and TVs. A lot of these things to get cartels, you got to do clandestinely, right? It's got to be a clandestine operation because they'll see you coming. I don't know why, and I think when they say they got to do more, what do you mean by they need to do more? And that's what needs to come out, right? They don't want to say what they need to say out loud. They want to see a battle between the Mexican government, whoever they can trust, against these cartels and wipe them out of Mexico. And they're not willing to do that for whatever reason. Just like the United States was over in Afghanistan for what, 20 years? And we didn't burn any poppy fields. We know that that's the source of all the heroin in the world. How come we didn't burn the goddamn fields? Right? Still unanswered. And not only unanswered, nobody asked the question from the mainstream media to the legacy media, not even enough conversations, even online. I mean, I haven't heard anybody really go into depth. Maybe I didn't look for it either. I'm sure somewhere on YouTube. How come they didn't burn all the poppy fields? Right? I mean, I'm drawing a blank on that one. Usually some things are just common sense. Oh, you want to economic? We really care about the economics of the world. If they burn the poppy seeds, if they're making heroin that's making everybody crazy, right? So we're talking about even the black market of heroin, drug dealing is something that you want to protect because of the economy, right? I don't know. It still goes unanswered. Now we're not even there anymore, right? So I would imagine the money that comes from those poppies goes to our arch enemies. It's incredible. The national politics is just crazy. So the same thing in Mexico. There is some benefit maybe to Mexico in terms of what they perceive as peace by letting the cartels operate. Because if you get rid of the cartels, you got to build a new equilibrium, right? You're going to have to put more money into making sure they never come back. Just like if we have the border secure like we do now, the way we have it secured, we're going to have to take a chunk of our money every single year to be able to keep that level of defense at our borders so it can't revert back. So your protection costs money. Right? It costs money. So you change the equilibrium of things, you're going to have to spend money to maintain it. Right? It's not going to just happen once. This is going to have to be that way for the rest of the existence of the United States. Because there's always going to be a black market for people to get into our country.
So you just mentioned something about invasion of Mexico. Is there any talk or any thoughts about actually U.S. military forces going into Mexico?
No. Next question.
On tariffs, are any other industries other than automotive reaching out to you guys to carve out special deals? And did the automotive industry know this was coming before today?
Well, a number of industries have reached out to us to ask us for exceptions to the tariffs, but I think the president's been very clear here that he wants the tariffs to apply broadly. He doesn't want to have 500 different industries getting 500 different carve-outs. And the way to avoid application of the tariffs is to have your factory and have your facility in the United States of America. That is the way. Invest in America. That is how you will avoid being penalized by these tariffs. Sir.
Vice President, KSAT 12, John Paul Barajas. You've been talking about the improvements that your administration has done here with the crossings. Can you talk about the decline prior to President Trump taking office under the Biden administration?
Well, I think like so many Americans, apparently members of the Mexican drug cartel figured out in November and December after the election that Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel and they had to be dealing with the then president-elect and now president. If you look at what drove the declines before the inauguration, people will tell you they knew that Donald Trump was coming back into office. They knew he was going to take border enforcement seriously. And so they were already getting ahead of actually cutting down those illegal crossing numbers. We saw that from the Mexican government, of course, because we were threatening some economic sanctions against them. But we also saw it from the cartels themselves. And even today, because of course it doesn't, it takes a little time to get from the deepest parts of Central America to the American southern border, what we often find is that there are massive numbers of illegal immigrants who have already started to make the trek and have decided, you know what, because Donald Trump's president, we're going to go back home. We heard today about a Honduran group of migrants who decided they're just going to go back home because they recognize that under Donald Trump's leadership, we take border enforcement seriously. Thank you all. Take care.
All right, so that was it. And listen, it makes sense. He's making a lot of sense there. And hey, listen, it was a good press conference. I missed this one. I don't know if they just released it late, but since it was whatever they had to do to scrub it, but this happened on the 5th of March, 5 days ago. Or maybe it just happened to come up on my feed, but I was glad I caught this one. And we got a glimpse of a couple of the cabinet, the director, Tulsi, and my man, Pete, for the military. And it's going to take all hands on deck to make sure that we secure the borders. And then there's so much more to do. It'd be nice to see some more press conferences like this one. All right. So, yeah, I like J.D. Vance as well. I think he's going to be formative, like I said, a formidable opponent in 2028. And it's clear to me that he's being groomed to be the front runner. And only because you can see how much leeway he has to speak, more than any other vice president I've seen in years. It's like you could just tell he's not just a vice president. He's actually has a lot of juice to say what he thinks and what he feels, on his own, right? So, and President Trump seems to back him as a natural successor, like he's being groomed to be president. Anyway, thanks for coming up. Curtis, I saw Curtis earlier. Thanks, Katilia. I see you tonight. Have a good one. Our Payne, Marriage, Politics, and Sports, over and out.